I thought they were good emotions. I mean, I was frustrated, and I still believe nobody outside of this building knows what they're talking about. So.
Welcome to Jets Talk. My name's Ryan. I'll be your pilot. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. If you've been here before, welcome back. I love having you here. Boys and girls, while I am not the owner of that video, spitting and throwing out the Wilson jersey, I will say I share a lot of the same feelings at this particular moment in time. This was an absolute failure by the number 2 overall pick from just last year. But let's jump into it. Let's talk about this game overall. I'll give you my top 5 takeaways. We've got a lot to discuss here, and I want to hear your thoughts in the comments section down below before this video, and then after what I have to say and everything. So let's jump into it without further ado. First on the docket, the special teams. Let's talk about the final, for all intents and purposes, the final play of the game. The Jets punt the ball after failing to convert a 3rd and 1, and the first touchdown via punt return in the NFL this season is returned in spectacular fashion, regardless of, some of the fans that are chirping about penalties and whatnot. There were certainly opportunities to call penalties on that final play, but I don't think that we should have ever had the opportunity to punt the ball. Honestly, I as much as yes, it sucks. We gave up the punt for the touchdown. The Patriots win. Your defense only gives up 3 points. I'm not going to crucify the special teams unit for this. The heavy wins, man punted well for the majority of the day. Credit to Bill Belichick. He knew on the coin toss which direction he wanted the wind at the most critical points in the game, and that decision from early on, that is a 4D chess move from the coach, the Super Bowl winning coach. And look, we weren't able to kick it as far as we would have otherwise maybe been able to kick it because of the wind and the issues and everything. The kick sailed, and it was just an easy return for the Patriots. And I'm sitting there in disbelief as I'm watching the play unfold. I'm like, this is going to happen. We're about to lose the worst football game I've watched in a long time, from both sides of the coin, both offenses. But this was a tough game to watch. We wasted a solid 4.5 hours of this. So I appreciate you guys that are tuning in to just get a little more pain to go with it. This is the sprinkles on top. So first things first, obviously special teams touchdown is frustrating, but I'm not going to lose sight of a very good special teams unit overall on the season here. Defensive line-wise, we had 6 sacks. Quinnen, Carl Lawson, Huff, JFM, Michael Clemens, and Quincy all come away with a sack of Mac Jones. That's 6 sacks. That's 12 sacks in 2 games against the Patriots. This unit allowed 3 points to the opposing team's offense. 3 points. 6 sacks. If you told me the Jets were going to allow 3 points, get 6 sacks, and we'd still lose this game, if you bet me that, I'd throw a ton of money on it. There's no way we get 6 sacks and only allow them to score 3 points, and we lose this game. No shot. No shot. Well, we did it. We did it. Oh, God. Defensively, across the board, as much as the sacks were great, we still got beat on 3rd down. How many times do we see a long 3rd down, 3rd and 16, and the Patriots are converting it, or just a toss out in the flat, or just beyond the line of scrimmage? I'm talking Mac Jones had himself 22 of 27 passing, and that is really good, don't get me wrong, but I think he only had 1 pass over 5 yards. It was a pass, I believe it was to Jacoby Myers near the sideline. Aside from that, everything was within 5 yards. There were plays that went longer than 5 yards because of our inability to tackle. We had a lot of missed tackles today, a whole lot of missed tackles. And that was frustrating. But the defense did their job. They got critical sacks, pushed the Patriots offense back, pushed their special teams back to the point where they missed a field goal by a yard because we got that sack. The defensive line held up, not even just the defensive line, the defensive unit overall held up their end of the bargain consistently. It has been a consistent trend over this entire season. And it feels bad that they, anytime you prevent the other team's offense from scoring more than 3 points, you should be winning that game. Let's move to the offensive side of the ball. Things I'm frustrated with. I think you can all know where this is going. I'm going to leave that one to the very end. Let's talk about the running game first. We are running out of gas. Last week was run, baby, run. We ran it down the Bills' throats. This week, Michael Carter and James Robinson got no yardage. Is that an offensive line issue? We're obviously starting our fifth string tackle, our third string guard. Not going to be, a great push right off the bat. Was it play calling? Was it the inability to throw that allowed the Patriots to tee off on our running game? Michael Carter had 9 touches for 17 yards. Robinson had 7 touches for 10 yards. Carter had 1 completion for the -2, so that's why the yardage looks a little weird. Under 2 yards per touch. That to me is the story of the game. They were able to just flat out stop the run because they were not afraid of our quarterback beating them over the top. These are good running backs. This isn't a bad running back room. But to average under 2 yards per attempt, it's kind of like that weird damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like last time we didn't run the ball enough, especially with Zach Wilson and the running game, and we didn't get a whole lot of yards. This game, we got shut down even harder. The wind obviously playing a factor, 20-plus mile-an-hour winds, probably makes you want to run the ball a little bit more, but the Jets not being able to convert first downs and really not getting any push up front was a continuous trend throughout this game. The wide receiver room, this one's interesting. This one is very, very interesting because I think we're starting to see, and I don't love seeing it, but I think we're starting to see the wide receivers start to lose confidence in quarterback Zach Wilson. Garrett Wilson had 12 yards today. Denzel Mims leads the way with 35 yards. Elijah Moore gets back in action, has 2 receptions for 17 yards. And it just feels weird. That's the only way I can go about saying it. It feels weird. Like, obviously, we were all very irritated with the Denzel Mims trade request at the beginning of the season, and then the reclamation project. Then he, had a big-time catch 2 weeks ago for us. We were like, okay, Denzel Mims, great. That was where some of the tripping started. We heard it from Garrett Wilson in the preseason. Oh, it's nice to get a ball thrown, that isn't going 100 miles an hour at you. That's clearly a nod at Garrett Wilson saying, hey, well, Zach, you got to take a little bit of zip off the ball. Heard that earlier. Little trips. Elijah Moore not getting involved. Demands a trade. He sees his value going in the shitter. As much as I was frustrated with Elijah Moore, watching these games, I'm starting to side with the wide receivers here. I'm not going to lie. Now, after the game, Garrett Wilson had this to say. This shit is not okay. Straight up, it's not okay. How many total yards do we have? 103? That shit is not going to fly. We got dudes. It's time to be consistent. It's time to win the games we should win. It is unacceptable. No one wants to feel like this, but that's not enough. You've got to do something about it. I feel this is a wake-up for some of the people in the facility, for us in the facility to get on our details. Who? All of us. We got to come the right way, come ready for work. We got to have a plan. We can't be passively working and can't be just in the facility and not know what we are there for. I'm going to call it like it is. We got to get better in the passing game. If we want to be here, if we want to be where we want to be at, we know we can be there. That's the most frustrating part. We ain't going to be in the games like this. They didn't even score on offense and we lost the game. This shit is sorry. We out here looking sorry, man. We know that we're not sorry, so that's why it really hurts. We know we're better than that. We can do more. Honestly, I feel like they got to put more trust in the receiver room. I feel like we can go up and make plays and do things. I don't know if everyone feels that way, but hopefully by the time we get around to next week, everyone feels that way. I don't really have a problem with Garrett Wilson saying this, like at all. I like when players do take a little bit of responsibility, and I think he clearly realizes this wide receiver room is stacked. It is very, very talented. I think the fans see it. And I think this, to me, is leading to more of a shift from like maybe the Zach Wilson camp to maybe more of the Elijah Moore camp. Or maybe, questioning the play calling. Like, this could definitely signal a little bit of the, are we losing the locker room? And I don't think that's really the case. But I will say this. There's a lot of players on this team that realize how good this team is and that there is one big weak link across the board that has been holding this team back, and he's the reason why we've lost 2 of our games here. And I think it's going to start to get a little bit prickly depending on what happens these next few weeks. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see here. And then finally, let's bring it back around. We're going to talk about Zach Wilson, the offense, and Mike LaFleur. Zach goes 9 of 22, 41% completion percentage, 77 yards, has 3 rushes for 26 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. I want to say he was sacked like 3 times today. This was by far the worst performance I've seen from Zach Wilson. Like, even the last Patriot game where you had the 3 interceptions and like the game last year, week 2, where you had the 4 interceptions, like those were bad games. This game stunk. This was hard to watch. And I don't even know how you how do you go from like, oh, we don't, people outside the building don't know anything. This is what Zach Wilson had to say when asked about if he felt like he let his defense down.
As an offense, though, when you guys are only able to score 3 points, the defense only lets up 3 points. Do you feel like you let the defense down at all?
No.
That's an alarming answer. I'm not going to lie. When you say, oh, no, I don't think I let the defense down. You had negative 21 passing yards in the second half, dude. Negative 21. This NFL is legitimately built for passing offenses. You have to try not to get yardage. And you mustered negative 21 yards in the second half. I don't know what the answer is. Robert Saleh's come out and said it's the furthest thing from his mind as far as benching Zach Wilson or making a quarterback change. And to an extent, yeah, I can really believe it, because I'm looking at the back end of this and I'm looking at Joe Flacco and I'm looking at Mike White and I see neither one of them are under contract for next year. Do any of us really believe either of those guys are going to be our star quarterback? I don't think so. Should Robert Saleh hold Zach Wilson accountable like he did with Elijah Moore, like he did with Denzel Mims? Throw his ass on the bench, let him learn a little bit. I think you could argue that. I think there's a little bit of me, or I shouldn't even say a little bit of me. There's a lot of bit of me that wants to just see him air the ball out. Let's throw the ball 50 times a game. At least get him a ton of reps so you know what you have by the end of the year. I think if you pull him, you're making the decision now that he's not your quarterback for next year. I think that's kind of the vibe that I'm sort of feeling here. I don't know. The kid's got all the talent in the world. He can't put it together. And this game, clearly from the play calling, both teams looked like they were nervous about their quarterbacks, and the Jets looked like they were clearly afraid to let Zach Wilson loose at all. Like, no real big time throws. He had 2 almost interceptions, one that was almost a pick 6. I'm holding my breath. I'm like, oh, at least we're going to overtime here at the end of the game. And then on 3rd and 1, game on the line, you friggin' throw a behind the line of scrimmage pass out to the flat to Michael Carter. It was like telegraphed, the whole thing. It was just terrible. Absolutely, absolutely horrible. And Mike LaFleur, I don't think he did us many favors. I think I'm not as upset with LaFleur. I'm irritated, I think, because there were some funky play calls. A lot of the running, not getting more than 2 yards of carry. I think there's probably something to be said for the okay, would you rather have 2 yards on this first or second down, whatever the case may be, run, or would you rather have another opportunity for Zach to throw the ball? And for them to run the ball into a line of scrimmage that was only getting 2 yards clearly signals to me that they don't want to give Zach Wilson those extra reps because they are afraid he's going to make the oh-so-critical mistake. And while Zach didn't create the mistake. He literally created nothing else, nothing of value at all. The entirety of the day. There's not one thing I can look at aside from his legs at the very beginning of the game when there was nothing else really going. At one point, he was like 0-4. And I'm like, okay, well, one was a drop, one was a throwaway. I don't really remember what the other two were, but either way, 0-4, not all on Zach. He's making some plays with his legs, getting some sort of offense going when the running game can't get going. But it's clear as day that this team is hiding and playing well in spite of Zach Wilson. So I sit here today and I say, is Zach Wilson the guy moving forward? I think you got to start him against Buffalo, or not against Buffalo, against Chicago next week. It's at home. He has to play well. If he struggles against a bad Bears defense, I think the leash is going to be very, very short, and I think you owe it to the rest of the guys on this team to pull the plug on Zach. I think that's where it kind of comes from, and there's going to be a lot of talk this week. What options do the Jets have in the offseason? I'm sure I'll make a video about it this week. We'll talk about some things that the Jets could do, what we could be hopeful for. There's still 7 games left in this season. The Jets went from potentially being in first place. That's what this was. This was a playoff game. The Jets went from potentially being in first place to being last in the division. Now, it doesn't mean we're not making the playoffs. But when I look at this team, specifically at the quarterback, I'm not thinking we're going further than the first game in the playoffs. If your quarterback cannot be trusted to get like 100 yards, then you don't play him. You can't win with that. That's not a winning formula. You cannot hide your quarterback the entirety of the season, not have any sparks. Like aside from the fourth quarter against the Steelers and like a handful of passes the rest of the season, Zach Wilson has been the main reason we have not won more games or had a better offense the last 2 years. So I don't know. I'm frustrated. This one really sucked. I don't like losing that way. I don't like losing to the Patriots. And it sucks knowing that like the defense through 2 games got 12 sacks. The defense played well enough for us to win both games. The Jets should be 8-2 if it weren't for their quarterback. So look, I'm a pissed off Jet fan. I really want to see some wins here. I'm losing my patience for Zach by the day. And I don't have anything to combat. I can't say, oh, well, he's just young, or, oh, he didn't play in a crazy ton of games. Like, dude, you got to start hitting some passes. When you're missing the softballs, you're lobbing balls over Denzel Mims' head, you're skipping balls in front of Elijah Moore. Like, dude, that's a you problem. I don't care about the weather. Mac Jones was able to complete 22 passes. Zach Wilson, you got way more arm talent to cut through the wind. You couldn't hit the broadside of a barn today, dude. 9 completions. Ugh. That's it for me. Guys, let me know your thoughts of the game down below in the comments. Are you frustrated like me? Where do you think we go with the quarterback situation? What's the game plan moving forward? Let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, go Jets.